We are super blessed to have a special guest with us. Matt is here as well from Chairshot. Hey, say hello, Matt. Say hey, Matt.
Hey guys, it's Matt from the Chair Shot. Happy to be here again.
And we have a very special guest with us. He has done it all in All Japan. He has won numerous titles. He's won, I think he's won all the titles, and he's won all the major tournaments. And I've been blessed to be in touch with him through Facebook for the last few years. We're really excited to have Taiyo Kea come on the show. I'm lit up like a Christmas tree over here, man. Thank you for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks, Dave, Matt. Thanks for inviting me on. Privileged to be here. Swama Station. Yeah, man.
Yeah, it's an honor to have you here, and we're very excited. We're happy to get this time to talk to you and get to know you better, as you are now, and all that in and out of the ring.
All right, so why don't we get to the heart of it? We were just recording and everything was running like butter, guys, but something kind of glitched with OBS. Doesn't happen too often, but hey, OBS usually doesn't screw up one time right after another time. So I'm sticking with OBS. It's good software. It's also free, and folks, go out there and grab it if you're trying to get into the whole podcasting game or just trying to record audio. Anyways, so Kea, let's talk about this is the 20th year of the split. The split between All Japan Pro Wrestling and Pro Wrestling, the group that would eventually become Pro Wrestling Noah, and you are in a unique position because you were there at the time of this all happening, and on top of that have you were a foreigner being there at the time, but also you trained at the dojo, which is also a very unique thing. And so we were just wondering what kind of memories or what kind of things you remember. It's like the summer of 2000. I know it's a ways back, but I mean, there's some things I'm sure that kind of stick out, when you look at back at your career.
20 years, it blows me away. 20 years has passed. It makes me feel really old. But it was glad I got to experience that little bit of pro wrestling history. Yeah, it was during that time. It was a big shock. I didn't know what was going to happen. Really, nobody really knew what was going to happen if the split was going to be successful or not. And I remember like Akiyama coming up to me and saying like, I remember we were sitting in the locker room. He's like, oh, what are you gonna do? You gonna stay here, All Japan, or you go to Noah? I didn't get a lot of we kind of danced around it, kind of talked about it, but not too much. I just kind of just continue on because tours are still going on when they're already talking about it. It didn't officially happen like right away. But what it came down to, it came down to loyalty, and talking with Mrs. Baba and wrestlers that would continue on with All Japan. I remember thinking about it and saying like, oh, it's like I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Mr. Baba and everything that he taught me and everything. Everything else, he's a great guy. Yeah, it's like so it all came down to loyalty, and in the end, and it just I remember that first show right after, like how odd and different it was, and nobody knowing what the future held, but I made the right choice in the end.
Yeah, I was saying, have you ever thought about like what would happen if you did join Noah's? The loyalty, that's fantastic. But was there ever that thought in your mind of considering Noah, but here and there?
Of course, yeah. Those are all my my peers, and my senpai, my elder. How would you call it? Like not elder brother, but elder guy, the co-worker. But yeah, it's just like it's guys that I grew up with, essentially, right? I was 18 years old when I went there. I was 3 weeks after I graduated from high school. I was in Japan. That was like it's my adult life. So yeah, it was. I wanted to, I thought about it, and then in the end, like I always kind of like, being in wrestling, I always see like, the table is round. Like, you don't know who you're going to see like down the road. And I used to tell that to, after that experience, like I used to tell that to other guys coming up. I was like, you never, right now, you don't know who you're going to see down the road. So be cool to everybody.
Exactly.
No, I honestly think you're dead on with that, because as a musician, you really learn that you don't know who you're going to come across down the road later, who you're going to be, working with, interacting with. And I really appreciate you talking to us about the Noah stuff. Let's go back a little bit. We were talking about the relationship that you have with the Bava family, and then earlier we were talking about King Curtis Ayakea and Lord James Bleer also being a part of you getting over to Bava. What can you tell us about your relationship with those guys?
Yeah. So Curtis, King Curtis Ayakea, I know he's known by like a couple different names, but so as a kid, growing up with him, he's what you call like a Hanai dad, or like somebody. He's like in Hawaiian, would you say Hanai? It's almost like adopted, or take under your wing kind of guy. Yeah. So as a kid, he had a bodyboard stand, a boogie board stand down at Waikiki Beach. I used to hang out down there, and play around down there, and then eventually I worked down there as when I was like I think I was like 10 years old. I started working for him. I formed that relationship with him, all growing up, and through high school he always supported me, like shit financially, like talking with me, this like bullshit all the time. And eventually, then I got to, I met Lord James Blair's, which in Hawaii, both of them, they were like actually well-known people. And especially Lord James Blair's in the surfing world. Besides wrestling, in the surfing world, he was kind of a name because he used to do like a lot of the surf, kind of like commentating announcements. And I think it was his son or his daughter, or maybe even both of them, that were like world champions surfing. So yeah, and then I was telling you guys earlier too, like one thing that Mr. Blair told me was that he and Stu Hart were really close, and that they were best men at each other's weddings and stuff. So I always thought that was like a cool little fun fact about him.
Christopher Reeve and Robin Williams were roommates right over in New York, and they became super close, and they always said if one would make it, the other one would be looking out for each other. But a lot of people don't know that, because they don't really share a lot of parallel. They've never been in anything movie project wise or whatever, but Entertainment Tonight, if you watched that back in the 80s, and a fair amount of us did, you maybe caught a glimpse of that, and maybe that's where I first heard about it. But it's just it's cool that you get to see all these threads that connect, right, that nobody thinks about, and that's why we love hearing about this in podcasts and books and everything, all this stuff coming out to the fans. It's fantastic. So moving on to the next thing, let's go back a little bit to you mentioned you were 18, you just got out of high school, and you're like, oh man, what am I going to do after high school? And where does it connect where you kind of get over to Bava, where it's like, hey, I have a proposition for you, Mr. Kea, can you bring us over to that?
Sure. Well, it's sort of, like I said, growing up with King Curtis. So one thing about King Curtis, he was always tell all these stories and the wild tales, and he'd fuck around a lot, like they tell and then so like I never knew sometimes like what to believe, right? So so he was like, having a beer and then bullshitting with me, and it's like, It's so backtrack. So in high school, I played football and I wrestled, and I was my junior year. I was state champion, heavyweight division, and then so my senior year comes around, and then I'm starting to, wrestling season starting, getting into it. He was like, oh, your brother, you're a state champion. You ever thought about wrestling? And I was like, yeah, yes, but not as a career. Like, so one thing, again, backtrack. Curtis's beach stand on Waikiki Beach. So when all the wrestlers would come through Hawaii, like, they'd have WWF would have a show or local promotions, all the boys would come down to the beach and hang out. It's because, you got bodyboards, you got snorkeling, you got beach chairs and stuff. So all the boys used to hang out down there. So I used to see them growing up all the time. There's even a few wrestlers like I saw the Destroyer when I was like in middle school. I had no idea who this guy was with a goofy like wrestling mask. I was like, who's this dude? And he had the mask off, and then he had his mask off. He's talking to Curtis, and they both got those that wrestling voice. And then he puts the mask on, and holy shit, Japanese people, it's all around like, oh, Destroyer-san. They're freaking out. And then I was like, I had no idea who this guy was. There's a bunch of guys. Like I remember I used to see on there. So anyway, fast forward again. Curtis is talking to me about, what do you want to, do after high school? And I was like, I want to go to college and stuff like that. So anyway, senior year comes, the senior year, I wrestle. I took states again. He was like, I'm going to take your picture. I'm going to get to Lord Blair's. Lord Blair's goes up to Japan, every so often. I didn't know what his deal was in Japan. And so he goes, I'll give him a profile of you to take to Giant Baba. And I said, oh, yeah, cool. Like I said, he used to BS me and stuff like that. So, I mean, I did everything. He was like, oh, go get a passport too. Go get a passport. And I was like, okay, I'll go get a passport. So I talked to my grandma, my mom, go get my passport. But in my mind, I was already, okay, I want to go play small college football. And, I put in my paperwork for this school, like I'm in Shasta. It was a junior college because my grades weren't the best, and stuff like that. So I'm planning on going to this junior college in Shasta. Graduation comes around. He was like, hey, you gotta, I took your profile, everything up. Mr. Baba is coming down here in June. And he's interested in you. You want to go to Japan? I was like, yeah. And I remember him giving me an all Japan like program and stuff. I'm looking through it. I was like, yeah, it sounds pretty good. I'll meet him and stuff like that. But in my mind already, I was planning on going to college and stuff. So anyway, I graduated from high school. I remember we did like a family, like a vacation for like a week up in California. Come back and Mr. Blair's is there. So I meet him for lunch, and man, it's just, big dude, he's his head is like, it looks like it's 2 feet tall, he's just a big dude. But he was very nice and he spoke very good English. And I remember him like, he was like, oh, so, I hear you want to like wrestle in Japan. And I said, yeah, I'm interested in stuff like that. So he was like, well, when would you want to come up? I was like, well, I don't know. Whenever you'd have me. He goes, well, I leave in 3 days. And he goes, you have passport? And I was like, yeah, I got a passport. He goes, you want to come back with me? And it was like that quick. And that's what I was like, sure. And I was like, sitting in my mind, I'm like, okay, like, I can go to school anytime, pretty much, but this is like a once in a lifetime opportunity, and I don't know if this will come back, back towards me. So yeah, man, it's like that's how it happened, and like he goes, meet me, I think it was like meet me the next day. We take you shopping. I was like, okay. And then the next day, it was like all I wanted. I mean, they bought me like shoes and clothes and all this, like a bunch of stuff. And then I didn't experience this kind of stuff before in my life. And I was like, holy shit. And I mean, I went home with like bags of clothes and bags of stuff. And like my grandmother, because she's very, she's very into like education, and she went to college in Missouri, like, back in the day. So she's like, who's this person? And like, what's the deal? And she's asking all these questions. And I went from, I'm gonna go to school in California to, I'm gonna leave in 3 days to Japan. So it's kind of like the version of what happened with me getting to Japan.
Right. You said like at the high school you went to Japan. Like how impactful was it culture-wise to you?
Oh, it was a big culture shock, man. Yeah, man. You have Japanese culture, and within you have a wrestling culture. It's two different. I mean, it's just wrestling culture is just much more intense. You have your pecking order, your senpai, your kohai. Just starting off from that go do it guy, and then working your way up and stuff. And so it's very Japanese wrestling is based a lot with like sumo culture because of Rikidozan, and a lot of there were a lot of sumos that kind of started pro wrestling in Japan. So they the chanko nabe, making chanko, eating chanko, serving your senpai, the older guys, the guys above you.
How long did it take you to adapt?
Oh shit, a long time. Yeah, it took a few years. I mean, man, especially when you're a young boy, like coming in there, man, it's just like, I mean, you're effing up all the time, man. You're getting yelled at, shit thrown at you, it's just like, but they were, I gotta say, man, they were cool to me at the beginning, they, at the very beginning, like, they went out of their way to, help me out. But after a while, you keep effing up or you're not doing something correct or like how they want it, and, oh man, you just catch shit, you catch hell. But, yeah, it was an experience.
Yeah, that is because what you call it? Like, yeah, like they'll help you in the beginning, but as you go on, if you mess up, they're like, you should know by that type of thing. Like when they're yelling at you. But yeah, like when I went to Japan last year, it was a big culture difference for me as well. So I get it, even though it was just 2 weeks, but it was still big just to take in how they do things, a lot different than in the States.
Right. Everything is like, when you're learning how to bump, everything at the very beginning is very, they want everything like, I wouldn't say everybody, but they would like to have things perfect, right? And right. I still remember I was at the airport with hold on guys, I got an incoming call, I'm gonna decline it. I remember I was at the airport with Mr. Bob, and he was like, oh, Kira, do you know how to bump? And I'm like, and so this is like one thing with being around Curtis. Like Curtis, we talked about wrestling, but he didn't smarten me up to what wrestling was and what it entailed, the nitty gritty of it. So he was like that. So I remember him asking, Kira, you know how to bump? And then so I was like, what is bump? And he goes, how to fall. And then I was like a judo roll, like, and he was like, okay. And then that's all. I still remember that. Like, we were sitting on there next to each other, and I'm like, what the fuck is bump? And then yeah, man, it was just like that was like one of those things that later on is just like, and then you realize what the heck bump is, man. And like, your ass is sore, everything's sore on your body, your neck's sore, and you're getting the wind knocked out of you, and hundreds of times, like literally, like like get up, do it again, get up, do it again, get up, do it again. Throwing you every which way, squat, push-ups. Oh, it sucked at the beginning. Yeah.
What was the hardest thing to learn there during your training? What was the hardest thing for you?
Yeah, I'd say like bumpy, like yeah, everything. Everything was hard, man, at the beginning. Like at that time too. I'm a high school kid. I actually had a girlfriend back home, and it sucked. You're homesick. You want to go back home, but then you're
Right.
here to train and learn, and then yeah, it's just like just getting thrown around, and then like the cultural aspect of it too, and then like everything coming in at the bottom, you're everything is last for you, right? Everybody does everything first, and you're gonna eat last, you're gonna shower last. You first want to wake up in the morning to clean house. You answer the phones, even though you don't understand what the hell they're saying. It's, yeah, right.
Let's we move forward a bit. We get to the end of the 2000s. We start rolling into January of 2001, and you have this huge opportunity. You're gonna wrestle Keiji Muto, who is arguably one of the most internationally recognized wrestlers that comes from Japan. And I mean, that's like the beginning of a whole relationship with you and BATT and working with Muto. Can you kind of tell us about like what was going through your mind when you're finding out about you're gonna face him in the Tokyo Dome, if I'm not mistaken, January, and that's got to be like just huge. You're just like, wow, like mind blown kind of thing. Can you walk us through that, like when you found out and everything?
Sure. Yeah, man. Shit, I remember like the first time I was told about it was, it wasn't. It was like right before it. It can't be that close. Anyway, yeah, I remember I was at Corrigan Hall, and Mrs. Baba coming up to me and asking me like, Tokyo Dome show, you wrestle Muto Cage, you wrestle him single match, okay? And I was like, wait, huh? And, and I was like, yeah. I mean, it was like one of those, when you say yes, but you're excited, but then you're kind of intimidated, and you're kind of like, wait, yeah. And then I was like, yeah, sure. And then I was like, holy shit. And then, yeah, man. And he was one of those. So Muto like was one of those guys with like, like I used to see like great Muta, and I was like, I was freaking, oh, this guy's awesome. And like, what things he could do and how fast and agile he was. And yeah, man, it was pretty exciting. And then leading up to, so, never met him before, and never saw him in person before. Day of the show, freaking, first time I ever met him, like walking, we were passing each other, like in the hallway. I was like, oh, hi, man, hajimemashite, or nice to meet you. Introduce myself, and I was like, holy shit, he's a lot bigger than I thought he was. Like, like this, you watch somebody like on TV or whatever. I never thought like he was a bigger dude. Like, and I was like, fuck, this guy's pretty big. And then, yeah, he's a good sized guy. And actually, like, we talked about this later. Like, man, I think you got like Hawaiian or Samoan in you. I don't think you're pure Japanese, because his bone structure, if you really like look at him, like he's a thick dude, But yeah, that was like the first time I met him was the day of the Tokyo Dome. Like, yeah, and it was like, I had a fun time, and I was just like super, you had, how many thousands of people in front of you, and just like, I was like, you're here with a big star, and like, yeah, it was cool. It was like one of those moments in my life where, like, yeah, I look back and say, oh, that was awesome,
Yeah, I'm going to jump in real fast just because I want to give a little bit of context for listeners who are not fully kind of immersed in the background of the early 20s, All Japan, right? So this is actually more of a New Japan thing too. Is Keiji Muto, the great Muta, had spent 2000 over in a good chunk of 2000 WCW because he could play that card, because he was that well known in New Japan. He could just get over to WCW. He's over in WCW. At the end of 2000, he shows up at a show for Inoki. And he comes out with his bald head and his new trunks, and he has this new look. And so you basically get to face him right when that's like literally like a month, maybe even a few weeks after that. So I mean that's even bigger. You know, you kind of got to see him right before it starts getting to him being, you know, the Pudesu love and, you know, the hand gesture and, you know, using the Shining Wizard on a regular basis. And you know, that's like a big thing in not just Japanese wrestling history, but in like wrestling history itself, because he would go on to just go on a tear that year in 2001. He goes and wins the Triple Crown against Tenryu, and then you wind up winning tag team titles with him, if I'm not mistaken, for not only for New Japan, right? You're a New Japan tag team champion, and so I mean that's wow, you know, that doesn't happen. Like you mentioned, just getting the opportunity to work with him, that doesn't just happen to anybody. You know, so like, what do you have any memories of when you started tagging with him, when you started being a part of BATT with Shinzaki and him and Hase?
And Don Fry. Yeah, right. He was a part of that. I mean, occasionally, right? With that, and yeah, it was a man. That was actually, it was super cool because you know, you go from All Japan, and then you have the All Japan split with Noah, and then you go down to like, you know, oh shit, this company's gonna go down, and we're just gonna be a little indie company until, like, you know, we partner up with you know, New Japan, and then I started doing New Japan tours, which is like, man, they were like up there at that time, you know, like they Team 2000, and like, you know, they did just like, you know, their houses were better at that time. They're just everything about it was like a level up that time. And so, man, I enjoyed like doing tours with those guys. And I remember even who was it? God, I remember like even Scott Hall. Like I worked Scott Hall during that time. Different other guys, New Japan guys, even like seeing the because during that time too, they had like all that stuff with Pride. And the Pride guys were working, right, with New Japan. So I remember, like, you know, riding, you know, the Gaijin bus, the foreigner bus with those guys, and then, you know, hanging out with them, going out and having, you know, some beers and everything else with those guys. So, man, it was a good time. It was a fun time. Like, it was like Don Fry and I. We went out like it was like we were in Sapporo, up in Hokkaido, and like we were like freaking through like early mornings, you know, just like. Yeah, it was awesome.
I don't know if he's done a movie in a while, but he was in Public Enemies with
Right.
Johnny Depp and was it Chris? I think Christian Bale is in there too. But I mean, that's crazy how Don went into movies and he did that Godzilla movie. I mean, that guy is so cool. I love Don Fry, and I feel bad for not have mentioning him, but I'm glad that you know, definitely piped in that he was a member of BATT, because like originally it's like you and Otani and Fry and Muto, but then Otani winds up going to do the 0-1 thing, and that's, you know, scrubbed, and then Shinzaki comes, and then Hase gets revealed. I mean, I remember this period very fondly, just because all these things came unexpectedly with Muto jumping in, and then BATT forming, and the interaction with Team 2000. I dug it. I dug it all.
Oh yeah. During your time with Muto, what have you learned from Muto during your time like tagging with him? Like, did you pick his brain? Like, what did you get out of him, like information wise, to help you grow as a competitor in the long run?
His timing was awesome, you know, and he had the timing and the charisma, you know. I didn't have, you know, as much, you know, the charisma as he did, but yeah, his timing and charisma were awesome, and just like knowing like his gut reactions, you know, that he would do when he was wrestling were pretty like amazing. And yeah, he was just funny. There's a way how he would talk too sometimes, like in normal conversations that I would have with him and stuff. But yeah, very charismatic guy. Doing pro wrestling business wise, I mean, for himself, I thought he was like just very good. like for All Japan in general as a boss, sometimes I I don't know how good good of a decision that was, but it's different when you're in that place, right? You're the one in charge. You're making these calls and stuff. So
Right.
So around that time, also, like 6 months down the road, you start feuding with Tenryu, and you guys have these amazing freaking battles. And I think that's about the time you start switching your gear out to like the red, cool, machine-looking gear. I really love those, by the way. And you get that big win over Tenryu in summer 2002. And it's not too much further down the road that you start teaming with Kojima, and you guys win the Real World Tag League. You beat it was an Emblem. You beat Otani and Tanaka for the Real World Tag League, the tournament. And I mean, what do you remember teaming with Kojima? I mean, because that's not a lot of guys are able to say they're a regular tag team with Kojima for X amount of time, but you guys were tight for a good amount of time.
Yeah, man. It was fun wrestling with him and tagging with him, and like we did like the MLW show too. Also, and it was like in was it Manhattan Center, I believe it was, like in New York. Yeah, we did that over there, which was that was fun to do, and to finish our tour. I think we finished our tour and flying over there, do that show, checking out New York City too, and that was it was like right after Twin Towers, like 2001 and stuff like that. So yeah, it was fun. It was cool, but like, it just blows me away about Japanese, man. We fly from Japan all the way to New York City, and where does he want to go eat? Freaking Japanese restaurant. Are you fucking serious? Like I was like, man, we flew all the way from Tokyo to New York City, and you don't want to go get a slice of pizza. You don't want to go get like spaghetti or like something Italian, or I don't know, something very New Yorkers. But we're eating. I remember we ate at a freaking Japanese restaurant, and but yeah, Kojima, he was funny like that.
I had always wondered about how did that MLW connection with All Japan, like how did that get hooked up? Do you have any idea about that? Because I'd honestly been wondering that myself for years.
Yeah. Quick. Gary Albright, you remember? All Japan wrestler. So he was very good friends with Court Bauer. So Court should help out the Wild Samoans in Pennsylvania, and of course Gary was married to I believe it was Appa's daughter. So that's where the connection. And so I remember Court. He'd always talk with Gary, and like they'd be emailing each other, and they started emailing me, and then we'd make small talk here and there, and that's where MLW happened.
Wow, man, that is so cool. I had no idea about the Albright Bauer connection. And to some of the listeners who are not familiar with later 90s, a little like very early 2000s, more the late 90s, All Japan is there's a gentleman named Gary Albright. And if you've not seen any of his matches, you need to go to YouTube or get whatever you can get your hands on and watch this guy. He is literally, I know, no disrespect to Doc, because I love Doc. Steve Williams, Dr. Death, love that man, right? But I also think that Gary Albright is excuse my language, I don't say this very much. I might have to bleep this out, but I don't really care at the moment. He's a fucking suplex machine, Gary Albright was. I loved watching that dude in UWFI. Then eventually he gets over to All Japan and just chef's kiss. He's just right where he needs to go, and the time he's there is not very long. And he unfortunately passed away in 2000, if I'm not mistaken. And so big shout out to the spirit of Gary Albright. Big shout out to Doc, spirit of Doc, their families, their loved ones. They may be gone, but their legacy is gonna last forever, because they were badasses and they'd had some amazing, phenomenal wrestling work. You kind of move on to be you wind up becoming a heel. You wind up working with Taka and Bull Buchanan and Rico and Tato and I'm sorry, not Tato. You remember of RO&D, roughly obsess and destroy, if I'm not mistaken. It was kind of a
Yeah,
very
with
particular set of words, but yeah. What can you tell us about your time with RO&D? What do you remember of that?
R-O-N-D, right? And the same guy who made BAT, B-A-T-T, badass translate trading or something. Same dude, same guy, man. And for both of them, I was like, wait, what? Well, and man, it's not. It wasn't our idea. We just kind of go with it. It's very Japanese English, you know. It was the same guy who'd make all Muto's tights and stuff, and all his show gear and stuff. Same dude. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, man, that was a cool time, cool part of my life. So one part is like, you know, I blew up. So we were talking about Kojima, the tag team. It was with against Otani, and I blew out my knee. I blew out my ACL during that match. So I took a year off, and so when I came back as you know, as a heel and stuff, and that's when you know, D'Lo and all those guys, Bull Buchanan, they're all there. So and Eki Umaga was his other name, WWE name. So yeah, we kind of tagged up, and I met Eki. When they worked for like I forget what was the name of the indie company, FMW, and then I thought he did another one, but maybe I'm wrong. So I met them, yeah, through Gary, like back in the day. Like they came like back in the '90s. I remember I was hanging out with Gary down at Roppongi. It's like a good part of town in Tokyo, and yeah, I met those two guys. And like hanging out, especially Eki, like we talk the story about bullshitting different stuff, and back then he's talking about trying to get over to All Japan pro wrestling, and then of course they went to WWE. They did the 3-minute warning and stuff, but yeah, back to ROD, yeah, it was a big change. Came back and I blew out my knee. Had a year off, like gained a bunch of weight too. And then it was just like I wrestled with like knee braces because I wore like long pants for a bit, but I had like I had like these knee braces on that, like it sucked. Like I just was like trying to move in them and stuff, and because I had them on both legs, and because I had both ACL, I already had like a blown ACL that I never repaired for like a few years, and then when I blew up my other leg, I was like, I'm gonna do surgery on both knees at the same time period. So it was a slow process coming back and stuff, but it was cool. Like, hanging out, doing stuff with Taka. It was like it was awesome. Like almost it was a friendship, and just wrestling with those guys, being on the road with those guys, like a lot of laughs, a lot of good times. It was a good every part of my career up there was fun.
I was speaking of FMW, you actually competed there for a match. You teamed with Kenta Kobashi against Hayabusa and Jinsei Shinzaki, but that has been aired on TV. I don't know why that was, but can you tell me about your experience with that match? Teaming up with Kobashi, then working with guys like Jinsei and Hayabusa.
Yeah, that was another one too. It was man, I was just lucky, man. I got to do cool, amazing things. I remember we did like a Corrigan Hall show. It was an afternoon show, like 12 o'clock show or something. And then after that, we planned to go to it's Kawasaki Stadium, I believe it was. And we Joe over there at Kawasaki Stadium. It was. I just remember that ring being super freaking hard. Like I did
like no mat, just wood.
Oh, it was solid, man. Because like I was outside the ring, and then I come inside, and I did a drop kick off the top rope, and it was like one of those Japanese style missile drop kick where you bump on your back. And I remember I did it, and I landed on my back, and I was like, "Holy shit!" And it was like somebody just gut punched me, and but it was like, Hayabusa, man. He was awesome to watch, and I believe I had he and I we his first match coming into All Japan. It was a tag match. It was Shiga, myself versus Hayabusa and somebody else. But it was his first All Japan match in like Osaka or something. But yeah, man, those guys were awesome. Like to watch and to wrestle against, work against.
Okay, I'm gonna jump in real fast about why it hasn't been aired yet. So, okay, if I'm not mistaken, I can't remember if it's Samurai or if it's Gaara, but they were going to some because of COVID-19 and all the shows, the live shows were shut down for X amount of time. I forget which one of them was like, we're gonna upload stuff, and oh hey, wouldn't you know it, we're gonna release this match from '97 at their Kawasaki show that we've never been able to show, and then a week before they pulled it, and they just it's got TV rights all like kind of caught up in that. We talked with Brett, who goes by Bahu, and he does FMW. He's very, very knowledgeable about FMW. He's a huge database for FMW. He interviewed with us a ways back. Shout out to Brett, and he talked to us at pretty good length about what was going on, and we were talking about it, and we're like, oh man, it's gonna happen, and then literally a week later they're like, this match is not gonna be uploaded. And I think they put up some match with Kanemura, Yukihiro Kanemura, as a Kentaro Kanemura now. But yeah, that was a real trip, because I was hoping we were going to get to see that finally, because you can watch it on a handy cam, but it's not with the TV quality, like the TV camera's kind of quality. Let's get back a little bit about the senpai kohai. So there was folks that were training in the dojo right with you, right? Like they're right there. They're either starting out or they're in the system too. And there's teachers. And can you kind of tell us a little bit about like not so much the environment, but the folks around you? Like there's seniors and there's juniors and there's obviously the teachers there, right? And so who were some of the folks that you kind of interacted with around that time?
Sure. Head trainer, head guy was Kobashi, Kenta Kobashi. He was just he would just go get after it. He was just whatever. Pretty much he did everything that we did. And then he trained really hard and stuff like that. So he was the guy that would come in the dojo at that time. The eldest guy was shit, I just threw my name. Satoru, just my name. Anyway, but it was all the All Japan guys you pretty much see. Akiyama, Omori, Izumida. My roommate at that time was Shiga and Honda-san. And God, Asako-san. Also, Asako-san was the head guy at that time in the dojo. He's an elder guy. And then, for training days, Kobashi-san, another name for him, he'd come in and, do the training. Inoue-san was another guy that would come in. And like our dojo was actually, it's a pretty nice, I'd say, upper middle class neighborhood that the dojo was in. And it was like, at that time it was like rice paddies and everything all around, but it was a pretty nice place, looking back at it and stuff. But yeah, it was brutal in there. It was like like that was one of the parts of like training too. Back then it was like you weren't allowed to drink water. So throughout the whatever, like only during the summertime we get to go drink water like once. But like 2.5 hours, however long we were training, no water during the whole time. Yeah, it was pretty crazy. I mean, we do runs, we do bumping and all these different push-ups, sit-ups, add the different workouts and stuff. But yeah, man, it was like it was pretty brutal.
We get to right before the split. A little bit before the split, you became a World Junior Heavyweight Champion, right? You got to hold that title right when you were coming out like a year or two after you're coming out of being a rookie, and you're still considered a junior heavyweight. And so, what do you remember about your? I think it's. Did you have one or two World Junior Heavyweight title reigns? Because I mean, I'm a little fuzzy because I think you had one, but I think you'd know better.
I think it was just
shit. You might probably know better, actually. Yeah, man. Like I remember, I wrestled. I remember wrestling Daisuke Ikeda in the Tokyo Dome, right? That was our first Tokyo Dome experience. Was against him. I think we were like the second match, I think we were the second match of that show. Yeah, it was. I remember like wrestling against Ogawa for the title, and Ogawa-san, he was like one of those guys actually that he took care of me a lot, like outside of wrestling, a lot. Yeah, I had really good relationship with him. He was one of those guys I always looked up to in all Japan and just in general, in wrestling in Japan. But yeah, it was a pretty awesome experience. Of course, like just get to do that, Yeah, not much I can say. Like my memory on that is kind of, I don't remember too much, but yeah.
It is all good because we have some friends out there at poodlelove.com that have this kind of information just readily available, and I'm looking at it right now. And the one time you did win it was from Ogawa, and you vacated in '98 to become a heavyweight, right? And so, I mean, that's definitely a move up because I'm not sure if a lot of folks are familiar, but junior heavyweight wrestling is not seen as big of a scale. The main events are usually heavyweights. Heavyweights are what build what a wrestling promotion is built around. That's Tenryu leaving All Japan to go to war. It was credible because he's a huge star and he's a heavyweight. Heavyweights tend to be bigger in a box office. And so do you have any memories of when you started wrestling as a heavyweight?
Yeah, yeah and no. Yeah, just that was like, I mean, what this there wasn't that big of a difference, right? Going from going to, because you didn't always wrestle. When you wrestle single matches over there, you're going to wrestle everybody. You don't just wrestle the smaller guys and stuff like that. But yeah, so like the one story I can talk about is, or I remember, is like so when that happened, when they bumped up to heavyweight, was all they were talking about. Okay, Kea, maybe you move heavyweight, soon. And I took it as like, okay, we're you're telling me I'm going to go to heavyweight. So I think it was after one of my wrestling matches, like, oh yeah, I'm going to go. It was like an interview with with the press and stuff like that. I was like, yeah, I'm going to go wrestle heavyweight. And then so after it was like they put in the newspaper or the magazine that that I'm going to go to heavyweight, and then the office was like, no, not now. We're going to have you do it down the road. But since I already kind of proclaimed it, so that they
as well.
It up. So yeah, I remember. Like I was like, oh, okay. I guess I spoke too early.
Yeah. Speaking of moving up to the heavyweight division, you have won your singles title like as a heavyweight till 2006 as the Triple Crown champion. That also made you the first the person to hold the junior and the Triple Crown championship in your career in All Japan. How was that for you winning that belt for the first time?
Oh man, it was awesome. And then especially like having to like wrestle those just wrestling all the different guys and going to the different companies, and especially like all like really stiff and tough matches were like with like Tenor. I'd say like so. Oh, like I come out there with laces across my face, finishing like I'm just like my chest is all purple, like my back is sore, like, and then just like having to work my way, up and just getting the opportunity and the chance and stuff. So it was an awesome experience, and like I didn't know until after like about that part of history. Like I thought Misawa-san like about having like junior champion and then becoming a Triple Crown champion. It's a pretty cool thing to be part of that history.
Yeah, that was very well earned. Like you busted your ass and you made this big accomplishment. And out of your 3 Triple Crown championship matches, which one was the more memorable for you?
I say like the first one was going with
Kojima.
With Kojima was like the one that was just it was a hot ass arena too, but it was like the most memorable.
Noah runs a dome show, right? And I think it's called Destiny. It's 2005, and you are on it wrestling Misawa and Ogawa, guys that you're totally familiar with, and you're wrestling them with Muto at your side, right? So this is huge because this is one of the only matches that we get where you get to have Muto and Misawa, who are friends in real life, but in wrestling they have no business with each other until like this moment. And so, I mean, do you remember anything of that? Can you take us back to anything that you can recall?
Yeah, man. That was another one too, where originally, from what I understand, that was actually supposed to have been Muto and Kawada versus Misawa, and it was like, but Kawada didn't want to do it. So that's when they're like, hey, you want to wrestle this match? And I was like, yeah, sure. It'd be pretty awesome. After all that split and everything, but I was always friends with Ogawa-san, but we never really talked business, it was, and then that was actually, seeing, if you guys remember the referee was Joe Higuchi. So he was like another guy that I always looked up to, and he was good friends with Taiyo Kea too. So like it just seemed Joe and everyone and just hanging out with all those guys. It was awesome. It was cool. But of course, if you guys remember or if you watch that match, like that first, like when Muto and Misawa get into the ring, is just it's just like that when they both step into the ring and face each other. It's just like you can hear that crowd just pop, and it was like, oh shit, like that's every wrestler's. That's what you aim to do, right? Have that crowd pop, but you got thousands and thousands of people. Like it's an awesome feeling.
That's like a dream match, and you're involved with it, and it's like, my God, because that was a huge freaking dome show. I totally remember seeing that. I think I might actually have that on DVD, but that crowd was freaking huge. It totally was, and I mean they ate that up. And then that was the same show they had Kinsuke versus Kobashi with the machine gun chops.
Yeah, I mean I think that hurt each other's souls, man. It was just like that was brutal. Just watching it, I was I could feel it, man. It was. Yeah, that was intense.
Those two going at it, it's just ridiculous, man. Ridiculous. We wanted to ask about, the Real World Tag League, right, is coming up because it's, November is the usual time that the league starts. And we were wondering if, you had any memories of any particular ones of the Real World Tag Leagues that you've been a part of, because you've been, I'm looking at it right now, you've been a part of quite a lot of them. And starting from the 2000, I think you go until you have your knee issue, and so you're going from 2000 pretty much to, I'm looking at it, to 2012. You're just there, like almost every single one of them, just boom, 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 boom. Is there any anything that you remember from any of those tag leagues?
Man, what was cool about those is having like the other foreigners come inside, other guys coming through there, and I'm trying to like jog my memory with I think the one that was pretty memorable. It was like I'm trying to because I'm trying not to get like them. They start mashing together.
Oh sure. Yeah.
It was like it was like Bobby Duncan, Stan Hansen. They might have been tagged together, and what was Um, what's that guy? Bradshaw. Bradshaw was there. WWE guy. JBL, right? It was JBL and his tag partner. Yeah, I forgot those guys' names, but that I remember that tour was. It was just cool. Like, I mean, talk about big men of wrestling kind of deal. Like, he's big dudes. 6'6". Everybody's like 6'1" and above. 6 feet and up. But some big dudes, man. I mean, that was the thing that All Japan brought. That was the difference between All Japan and New Japan. I mean, New Japan, you have the big dudes, but I think All Japan like really had like the big man game, for professional wrestling. And that was a thing that Mr. Baba liked, because of course he was a big man. But shoot, like what could I say about the matches themselves? I don't know. I kind of don't remember that part. See, for me, as I get older, like I remember all the fun stuff, right? The stuff you do after the matches or on the road kind of deal. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like any other job where it's just like, hey,
right.
this is kind of the 9 to 5 kind of stuff, but then it's the people that kind of really make things memorable at your workplaces. You wind up
right.
like making strange bedfellows with people that like, you don't interact with them too much at work, but then after work you're like, oh yeah, that's I'm cool with that guy. Like we have a ball, have some drinks or just hang out. They're good people.
Right.
So what do you remember of you've won a couple of champions carnivals, right? You've won a couple, and
right.
Is there any memories that you have from winning any of your it's 2006 and 2012 that you win your carnivals, right? So is there anything, because that's a huge freaking trophy. I just gotta say,
right.
it's huge.
How heavy was it?
Oh, it's freaking heavy. I couldn't tell you like how heavy. I mean, shit, it's up there. Like I wouldn't say like 100, maybe 100 plus. I'm not too sure, but it was pretty heavy. Because like, I remember like, or even like picking it up and you hand it to somebody, like a regular dude. Like you got these office guys that they come and they do whatever their part of like the sponsorship or something. And you hand it to them and they oh shit, like you can see like no buckle underneath it, But yeah, like I remember shit like there's one thing about like those champion carnivals is like I remember like doing like a freaking like well we call them like Broadways. You go past, you wrestle past 30 minutes. Yeah, and then like I remember doing like I think I had to do like 3 of them, 2 or 3. I could be wrong, but I just remember like it's like because Fuchi was like a matchmaker guy, and he was like, "Oh, you young, you strong, you can do this." And I was like, "Yeah, but why? Yeah, you have somebody else do it." Like, but yeah, it was like, no, but yeah, those would get brutal. Actually, like so the fun parts of like those two was like actually be like not. I mean, you have like the main event ones, but like being on the road, and like the small towns and doing those and. Sometimes like you'd have like better matches at those than you would have like maybe sometimes at the main one, the finale.
You guys felt better about like a tag match that happened like at the start of the tour rather than the one that's like the big tour ending show. It's like, oh no, I kind of feel we nailed that one better like 2 or 3 days back in the tour. Am I?
Yeah, and then. Yeah, something like that, right? And then sometimes, like maybe just that day, the chemistry is good. It just it works, and the crowd is there. And like in the one part, like wrestling, one of we like back when I went, like I'd say like the first 10 years of wrestling, like Hakata down in Fukuoka was a really popping like town. It was a small building. It was like underneath like a bowling alley, but. Man, the crowds over there, it's so hyped, and that was like one of those like, okay, you're kind of looking forward to that one, and the energy off the crowd, and you have some cool matches with that, the crowd, of course, it sucks, man. You go into you walk into an arena where like the crowd is just dead, it's you get off on each other.
So is that Hakata Star Lanes? Because I think
Yeah,
is that
right.
the name of the joint? Yeah.
Right.
FMW
Right.
ran out of there too sometimes, and so it makes sense that
Everybody kind of did.
hot crowd. That's cool that you remember Hakata though. Is there any other smaller venues or smaller cities that you remember that it was like it's a good time because the crowds are gonna dig it?
Yeah, of course, like so Hakata, the last few years that I was there, it was kind of shit. It was in like the crowd wasn't that big, and the people weren't as into it. But so even like man, every place they had like those. So I'm trying to think like Nagoya, different parts of Nagoya, even going up like up north. It kind of depends. Like especially if you get up north and like it's cold as shit, and like it's like one of these ones like I don't know if you guys know this, but like so a lot of these places didn't have like a heating system, or maybe they didn't want to turn it on at a certain time. You need to pay the extra money, but yeah, I mean we'd be in that arena and like just freezing your ass off in back in the dressing room, and you're taking forever. You just try to warm up, and man, you can see the crowd. I don't know, man. I was like, I look at the crowd; they're just freezing out there. I was like, man, how the hell you're paying money and you're just freezing your ass off to come watch wrestling? And then of course, like summertime, it'd be the opposite. You go into the arena and it's hot as shit, and there's no air conditioning, and it's just and of course, like during the cold season, the winter season, you're just getting hit and taking bumps. It sucks. But back to the naming, like the arenas and stuff like that. I'm trying to think, but I can't think of it now. But I gotta say, my favorite arena was always the Budokan. That was like everything over all the domes, and I got to wrestle in all the domes in Japan. I think Budokan was always my favorite. Just the acoustics of it, the sound of it. And then like when the people would start like rocking and start stomping their feet, like you could just feel it, and that was my favorite, my tops.
So check this out. There is I'm pretty sure you are, and I got to double check. Maybe Mac wants to take a look, but there's a game called Virtual Pro Wrestling 2, right? It's for the Nintendo 64. And it's branded to all Japan, right? So Misawa, Kobashi, Kawada, Omori, Taka, No Fear, right? All their official themes and everything, and I'm pretty sure you're in there too. But when you get to play the Budokan, because that's one of the venues that's like a real venue in the game, when the crowd starts building up, it starts doing exactly like you're talking about. Like you can feel it. They actually projected that into the game with there's another game called All Japan Pro Wrestling, I think it's 3 Giant Graham 2000, and it's this exact same thing that you're talking about. And that one you just wrestled at Budokan, but it's the exact same thing. The crowd is just totally amped. They're into it. They're following the match like with eyes of a hawk. And so I'm not surprised to hear you say that the Budokan is your favorite, just because that was the mecca of All Japan in the 90s, right? That was like the place that it was like every time they would sell it out, like no question. The card, it really didn't matter because it was going to sell out. Boom, no questions for countless years. The later part of your career, you're mostly doing a lot of tag work, right? You're still doing singles. Obviously, you won the Champions Carnival 2012, but you start tagging. Well, I mean, after Kojima, you've got 4 different guys that you're tag team champions with. Just maybe give us a couple of impressions. I think you called him Eki, Jamal. You hold the tag belts with him. What do you remember of him?
Oh man, he was. I mean, like for a big man, most athletic guy I've ever seen. I mean, that guy could do a nip up, man. I've seen a guy do like a moonsault off like the second rope, and man, he was athletic, and he was funny too. Like we used to just like we just be cracking jokes and while we're wrestling and stuff like that. He was a fun guy. Yeah, rest in peace, man. That was like a huge loss. Of course, he was a big star WWE and going on to become a big star. Now, actually, I was just talking about this the other day. I was bullshitting with one of my friends who's not even not a wrestler and stuff like that. But we're talking about Trump, and then I was like, my friend I also showed this picture. He did this whole thing with Trump and stuff like that. So I pulled up the video, because it was like Vince McMahon, Donald Trump, and who's the other guy? Yeah. You guys remember that?
That is pretty funny now that I mean, because through whatever the political climate's been the last few years, that's honestly been like one of the things that literally nobody talks about anymore, is the fact that he was in WrestleMania, he's in the Hall of Fame, in the whole 9 yards. It's still pretty funny.
We don't talk about that Mania.
It's damn funny, it really is.
Yeah, it is funny, man.
Toshiaki Kawada, right? The dude, right? The dude, Mr. Black and Yellow. I mean, Tina, you got it first, but you tag with him. You're World Tag Team Champions with him. What do you remember of teaming with Kawada?
Not a lot of talking, no. But man, he was actually so like all throughout growing. He was one of those guys like. As I was rising up, maybe you've heard other stories about him, but man, he was known as being like this. To foreigners, he was like really standoffish, and even to other Japanese boys, he was kind of a prick, being truthful. But after the split, after like a few years, man, there's like this one hotel that I was staying at. There was like a restaurant downstairs, and he'd come by and he'd go have a couple drinks, and then one day he calls me up and says, "Hey, you want to come downstairs and have drink with me?" And I thought he was like fucking around with me. And I was like, "What? Huh? Wait, what?" And he goes, "Come downstairs." And then I was like, "Okay." And then come downstairs, had a few drinks, and then he starts talking English to me. He's like, just talking bullshit. I was like, "Is this happening right now? Is this?" And then I remember. And, he's. But he was a quiet, reserved guy, and there's a lot that I respect about him. He was he's a diehard, Japanese wrestler, and but I saw like in his later years, even to now, like he's just chilled out. I think he just from where he was when he was wrestling to now is just two different guys. It's pretty, and he has a pretty successful restaurant, from what I understand. He's always invited me to go over there. Never got to, but wrestling with him, it was good. It was an awesome experience. Even that I'm wrestling against him and wrestling with him was awesome.
Yeah, I hope one day I get to try out his restaurant too, because I mean, I hear it's really good, and it would just be an honor just to get in there, Minoru Suzuki, bad man. You team up with him in Gurentai, and you guys are tag team champions while he's still in All Japan. What do you remember of Minoru Suzuki?
He was a good brother of mine. He was watching him wrestling against him, wrestling with him. It was fun. But he was like one of those guys. He went to he goes for kind of like the beat of his own drum kind of deal, Yeah. So it was, whatever tempo, I'd say the other person, who we were wrestling against would start to do, he'd change it up, right? And so I'd say he changed up their timing. I would say. Kind of hard to explain, but he was an interesting guy, and he still is. Every time I've gone back to Japan, I hit him up, or I think he has a store over in Shibuya. I'll swing by, but he's a fun guy, and we'd spar before matches, submission. He was more like a Carl Gotch guy. I'm a mixer of amateur wrestling, jiu-jitsu, and stuff like that. So. We'd always train before the matches and stuff. But as a wrestler, awesome, phenomenal.
Yeah, the Carl Gotch pedigree is deep in that guy, but I mean that's what makes him so damn good, is because Gotch, he pretty much set up the entire training system for New Japan, like, what was it, like almost 50 years ago. So I mean, you know, when you're getting that guy and he's in your ear, and Gotch is like, this guy is like one of the best I've ever seen, which, you know, you would go on about. I mean, it's not surprising there. It's really not. Lastly, let's talk about a guy who I'm hoping he's doing better health-wise, because, you know, he's a very unique individual, much like yourself, got to train in the All Japan Dojo. Akebono, right? Akebono, who I have a tremendous amount of respect for folks who are not familiar with Akebono, he started out as if I'm not mistaken, he's a basketball player, and he got his way over to sumo, and became a huge deal in Japan. I mean, like, I can't use huge enough to illustrate how big of a deal he was, and became a Japanese national, because he was so huge, and he was become so ingrained into Japanese culture that they just loved him and embraced him. And he got to train over in the All Japan Dojo, and within his first year, he gets a match in the WWE while he's not signed to the WWE. Is very interesting kind of situation there. As somebody I'd love to interview at some point about, you know, that, because that's a very peculiar situation. But you know, what can you tell us about teaming up with Bono? What was that like?
Yeah, that was it was an awesome experience. You know, we connected, of course, because, you know, he was you know, him being, of course, from Hawaii. But yeah, he was, I mean, huge star, like you said, huge star in Japan. Grand champion of sumo, which is, I mean, that's the top of the top. Everybody knows, every single person in Japan knows who he is. And of course, you know, he did the, you know, to go back, he did the MMA or kickboxing route first, and and then not that successful in it, but yeah, and then so he, you know, moved over to pro wrestling. But I remember who helped him, who would, you know, help him a lot was Jamal Eki. So you know, trying to, you know teach him like a kind of like big man wrestling and stuff like that. But man, he was a hard worker. You know, he was a hustler, because, you know, he'd do All Japan, then he'd do all these like bunch of indie shows too, and then he had, like, you know, autograph signings. He was always a busy guy. But yeah, it was. I got to, you know, he was another guy too, like, because of who he was, and you know, he opened up a lot of other doors for me too, like just around Japan. But yeah, just touring out with him, and it was lots of fun. But yeah, he, of course, he had all his aches and pains. You know, his previous, you know, his injuries prior to, you know, from being in sumo and stuff like that, and moving over to pro wrestling. But yeah, he worked hard. And you know, I haven't got to see him in the past couple of years and stuff like that. But, you know, last time I did visit him, I think it was 2-3 years ago, when I was over in Japan. I went to stop by and see him and stuff. But yeah, I always wish him the best. You know.
Yeah, definitely. He's a very interesting figure in Japanese sports history. I mean, certainly there have been a number of you know, gaijin that have gone over to do sumo, and they, you know, for better or worse, wind up becoming they either become a pro wrestler, or they wind up becoming, you know, the grand champion, the Yokozuna. As one of them is John Tenta, like Earthquake, right? Earthquake, not a lot of people know this, but he trained in the All Japan Dojo. He spent like the first 2 years of his career either when he went home to Canada doing like independent shows, but he's trained in All Japan, just like what does he go by? Ming, right? Ming, he trained in the All Japan Dojo too, as well as the Barbarian. And nobody knows these things, you know, but it's interesting to kind of, when you discover these things, you're like, my goodness, you know. I mean, you can see Ming's face on the like Champions Carnival 80 poster, right? And it's like, boom, there's his face right before he heads over to the States and starts making a killing, right? As like this, you know, resident monster, and all this just huge legacy gets built around his reputation of just being a bad mofo and nobody, messes with Ming, Haku, right? He winds up being tag champions with Andre, right? I mean, that he just has this, this strange, career, and he still occasionally does, shows and whatnot, but yeah, it's really interesting, who comes out of the All Japan Dojo, it really is.
Outside of wrestling, what were your favorite things to do in like Hawaii and Japan? Like
Japan wise, shit. When I was younger, of course, like you want to go out and party, you want to go out and drink, and it was Roppongi, man. It's like when I was coming up there, it was everybody talked about it. Okay, go down to Roppongi. That was a spot where all the foreigners kind of hung out. It was like a very mixture of people. Last few years that I went down there, I was like, I mean, I didn't even go down there. It's a different vibe, and it's just not the same when I first went there. It was doing that, and then I mean, but one of the favorite spots actually I love in Japan too was, opposite of that is Kyoto. So I don't know if you got to go there, Matt, when you were there, but Kyoto.
I had not actually. No, I was mostly in Tokyo. But I did go to Roppongi. I went to Shibuya, Akihabara, stuff like that. But yeah, I was also ill during my time there.
It sucks. Okay, yeah, it was Kyoto was just it's a lot of temples and so that was like one of my favorite spots that I love going to, and like I said, I love Tokyo, like the big city, subways and everything else, and massive people, crowding into like a small spots. But and then I also like the opposite of that, like the countryside, like the old Japanese inn, that you were staying on at the on the road, and it's just sleeping on the floor is just I dug that part of Japan too. It's like, man, yeah, there's this, and in Hawaii, it was this hanging out with my buddies, beach, just like what is Hawaii, right? Sunshine and rainbows,
right?
And then right. I mean, how? That's another story with that name, right?
Yep.
They dropped that some years back, the rainbow part of it, right? Shit, I think it's like 2005. I got into jiu-jitsu, so like, and I moved over to Maui, so like that was part of my big part of my my hobby and my the things that I love to do, like with friends and stuff like that. So I like all the aspects about Brazilian jiu-jitsu that I still have fun with, or not as much fun right now, but yeah, it's just a part of my life.
Did you have any? Did you have any funny dojo stories when you were there? Because usually, like when people train in wrestling, you get like a funny story or two. Were there any when you were training in the dojo?
Oh man, I know there's a bunch. Just say what I want to say about the dojo. All Japan dojo is what there was always. Shit. I mean, there's a couple. Like one of the stories was there was a story that there was a ghost in the dojo. And everybody would say that they would hear somebody. So the way how the dojo was set up, it's a huge house. So half the house is like a big training area with the ring inside, weights and everything, and other half is a house. So the story was like, especially my old roommate was Shiga-san. Shiga, he would always say like, "Oh, Kia-san, somebody called me inside in the dojo training area, and I go, nobody there." And like they're all scared shitless of this, and they always ask me, like, nobody call you, nobody. Nobody. I was like, no, I don't hear shit. And then that was like one part. I mean, there's a bunch of stories, but and the other one was so when you're a young boy, coming up, you have to answer the phone call. I mean, you have to have, every time they would somebody would call the dojo, you have to go over there and pick it up, and no matter what time of the night, right? And then you got guys get drunk, they call it at 3 o'clock in the morning. You got to run your ass downstairs and go pick up the phone. Well, like I was roomed with Shiga-san, and of course, so we were each other. But he was such a nice guy. Every time the phone would ring, he'd get up for me because I would act like I'm sleeping. I'd hear it. I was like, "Fuck, I'm gonna get up." And he'd go downstairs. He'd answer the phone calls for me. But then he also, another part of him, he had really bad snoring. So like, I remember in the middle of the night, like, he'd be snoring, and you know, we're sleeping on the floor. And I remember I grabbed his nose a few times, and he start choking. And then I go back to act like I'm sleeping. So man, it's it's a mixture of stories, but yeah, man, it's like, I don't know, it's just part of dojo life, ups and downs.
That's great.
Yeah, most definitely. We were just talking about jiu-jitsu, right? Jiu-jitsu is a big part of your life. Is there anything you'd like to share on that front? I mean, it's something that you're into right now, obviously in limited capacity, but I mean, so it's 2000, I think you said 2005, right, is when you started with the jiu-jitsu. So like, tell us about, what kind of relationship like you have with it. I mean, it's obviously something that, you really are digging, but I mean, some folks may not know that, you're I feel awful because I keep wanting to say that you're a brown belt, but I can't remember which belt you are. But I know that you've been working at it for a while, and it takes time to get up there. I mean, a lot of folks may not know, but Ed O'Neill, right? Al Bundy, right? I love the guy to death. I was a huge Mary Patrona fan. I think he just got his black belt in the Gracie, right? One of the Gracie systems, and he just got it like maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and he's been practicing for, I want to say, like 30 years. So I mean, it takes some time. I mean, so, but like, please, what would you care to share about, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and you?
Yeah, so yeah, I do have my black belt. It was one of those things I did. I don't think I got it as quickly too, because it was inconsistent. Because I would always be on the road, going back and forth to Japan. So yeah, it's just one of those things that it was really, it was like, I come back from Japan, and just. I always loved, like, of course, wrestling, wrestling growing up, but it was just like one of those places that you can go kind of while you're doing it, you can kind of just escape, mentally. You're not thinking about anything else. And yeah, it was just, I got my black belt a couple years ago. Yeah, I know one of the parts is, my teacher is his name is Luis Heredia. His name of the school I train at is Maui Jiu-Jitsu. But so Luis was Rickson Gracie's like best student. So him and Rickson came to the States together, and I think Luis was like a purple belt at that time. And fun fact story. I remember Luis telling me the Anjo story. You guys know about the Anjo story? The fun part that I think nobody else got the experience as far as knowing Luis and knowing Anjo. And so having both their stories told, right? And two different stories, which is true. I don't know. So like the basic story is like Luis is having a class. I think he's having like a beginner like jiu-jitsu class he's teaching. And Anjo comes in with a bunch of press, and he wants to fight. He wants to throw down with Rickson, and so Luis told me he didn't know what to do, so he calls Rickson on the phone. Rickson comes running down, like I think Rickson was just like in a white beater tank top and like some sweats, and they want to. Anjo wants to throw down. Rickson said no. I want to like let's do this. Let's make let's make some money on this, pretty much. And let's make a show out of this, but Anjo didn't want to do it. They kick all the press out, they close up all the windows, and they go at it. And when everything's opened back up, they let the press back in. Anjo's he's a bloody mess, and there's Rickson is the clear like winner. So it is pretty much. I mean, it's almost what Anjo told me, and then and of course Luis's side. But I think it was it was a bad thing, right, on Anjo's part. So, but yeah, it's a big kind of like MMA pro wrestling history, I guess you want to call it. Like it's a big story, right? Right.
Mm.
Yeah.
that was a pretty big one, most definitely, just because it was very rare at that time where you see somebody from Japan going over to the States and going like, no, we're going to do this right now. Most of the time, everything is kind of confined in Japan. You know, the fighters are going to come in Japan. They're going to fight in Japan. But this time, it's Anjo going over to the U.S., which you really don't see very often.
Right.
What would you say was the one match, if you had to pick one match, that made you go, I'm at the top of my career, like this, like I'm a star. Like I am the star, I'm the top guy. What match made you feel like you were, like you made it as like someone to like look up to you in a way?
Shit. I would say there's like one, but I mean, it's like thinking back with my first match with Muto, like that was awesome. Like I couldn't tell you which match we did it, but I mean, there's times like I took it all in. Like I remember that being back in the dressing room at like a dome show and just like seeing the crowd, and then like just looking at the time and then looking at the card and like where you're coming up, and then just as the card moves up and then as it gets closer, and then you got your little rituals that you do like stretching, warming. I wasn't super religious, but I'd always say like a prayer before I go out. But yeah, man, it's just like getting on that stage and like smoke popping up and just just walking through it. It was all awesome. So I couldn't say there was like one particular moment that I can remember that said, okay, yeah, I've made it. But I mean, it was all pretty awesome. Even sometimes like doing like I said, like those house shows, those small shows, is getting to say like you're entertaining, you're wrestling in front of people. Like it's pretty cool, man.
We talk about the Matt was asking about like the match where you kind of think you're like, hey ma, top of the world, right? But what about do you remember, is there a like the funnest match, like you were working with guys that it was just like, oh man, it's like a breeze, because wrestling, it's very physical, obviously it takes a good amount of communication, right, and psychology, but I'm sure that there was guys that at a time you were like working with or you were like cool with, maybe like a tag match where you're like, oh man, this is gonna be fun because these guys, it's really easy to work with them. Is there any match that you would say like you had a great time or it was like a fun match, anything like that?
Shoot, I'm trying to remember. Gosh, there's a wrestler I can't I can't think of his name right now. Damn it! He came over with Tenru, and he was a big guy, and he was a former sumo wrestler too. And we used to side joke. So we was like, man, we looked across the ring. It was like Eki and me, Jamal and me across the ring, and like, fuck, this motherfucker looks high, and like he's smoking weed. And so we're looking across the ring, like, yeah. And so we his nickname, gosh, Arashi is his name. So we used to look across the ring. Yeah, we looking across the ring and like, man, this motherfucker's high. And then we used to say, as a joke, we used to call him Smokey. Like, this, not to his face, but this is behind the back. And then, of course, right, he gets busted for smoking weed. And we're like, then we see him after, like, oh, shit, you holding out on us? And then he's like, and then, yeah, it was just like, I don't know. That was like one of those things, like, inside joke that we used to always, like, make this joke about him, like, being high and stuff like that. And, like, looking across at him. And then, yeah, then he gets busted for weed. So, like, oh, shit. He really was high, because we just, hyperbole kind of deal. But yeah, man, it was one of those, yeah. Us and Smokey.
Oh my God, yeah. I had read about that, and I had heard about how much they got him with, and it was like he was tagging. He had been tagging with Muto, and he was kind of getting up to the upper mid card. I think he challenged for the Triple Crown, and things were kind of up for him because most of his career he had spent sort of in the lower mid card, right? Because he started out in All Japan trainee and left to go to SWS. He goes to War, and then eventually he comes back to All Japan. But I mean, he had things going right where he wanted them, and then all of a sudden, like, yeah, he got busted with weed, and that destroyed his career, and he kind of showed up here and there, but. Man, Arashi and the weed thing, my God.
Yeah, that was a story for like years. Like we were like, yeah, man, oh, this fucking guy's high, man. And then we like just look at his eyes, and then after a while, it was a joke, and it was an inside joke, but we never thought anything of it. And then, yeah, it was
But match wise, is there anything like a match like any tag matches or anything where like you just had like it was fun. It was just a relatively like an easy night. I've heard some wrestlers say, "Well, I was working with." I hate to go there because shows I've been listening to, but I work with like Midnight Express or something. Oh, okay. Well, shit. The night I get the night off essentially because these guys, so easy to work with, right? Was there anybody that it was like? Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I'd say like the Canon Express, Doug Furness, Danny Crawford. Man, like those guys coming up, like because Doug was, I mean, not Doug, Danny. Danny was if you kind of hear people like talk about All Japan Pro Wrestling and different wrestlers, like guys that are like really, smart to the game and smart to pro wrestling. It was like Danny's name comes up a lot, Danny Crawford, and he was fun to work with, and he was fun to watch because he can go from like serious to like comedy, and it's just like I can remember him like he was wrestling against him and Doug were wrestling against Giant Kamala and Abdullah the Butcher, and of course Doug comes running out, music their music they're playing, Doug comes running out, and then you don't see Danny, and then like they're looking. And then here comes Danny coming running out. He gets in the ring and he's got, toilet paper hanging out of the back of his trunk, kind of deal. And toilet paper like stuck to his shoe and stuff like that. But I don't know. It's bullshit like that. It makes it so much fun. Yeah.
I really appreciate everything. We've actually gone on quite a bit longer than I thought, but we were gonna have this nailed down. But I feel like we've had a good time, besides the technical setbacks. So I really appreciate you coming on and talking with us. I hope maybe we can do this again sometime because I'm sure that you've got some stories that you can share that are just like mind blowing to folks that are just getting into All Japan from the 90s. It kind of gets up to you right around the late 90s, and it gets to the 2000s Muto era, and obviously you're a piece of that. And you went through this like fantastic window of time where you got to see and be exposed to some of the what they quote would say the four pillars, right? The four pillars era of All Japan to the Muto era, right up until about a couple years back, and you've got this awesome perspective, and we're so happy that you could come on and share it with us.
Despite the difficulties, this was a great time. I learned so much, plenty of laughs, plenty of fun stories, and I really hope we can work with you again in the future. That would be great.
Yeah, man, sure, guys. Had fun. Thanks again for inviting me, Dave, Matt. Anytime, man. Just hit me up, give me a holler. We'll talk about something or some interesting ideas, and I'm down for it. I don't talk wrestling too much nowadays, and as you can see, like my memory for wrestling is like, man, I can remember the good times where like at certain matches, like I'm just I gotta pick my brain, But yeah, man, it's had fun.
Yeah, and totally. If you get any ideas on like stories, like something you like, click. Oh shit, what, this would be really good. If you'd like to send us ideas, memories or some good stories you can remember, you don't even necessarily need to Skype call us. If you just record it, you can send it. We would be delighted to have it on the show or just share it with our fans. And, again, I can't say enough. Thank you so much for coming on. We want to make sure that you're checking us out at AJPW Worldwide on Twitter, and that you're in the Facebook group, the All Japan Worldwide Facebook group. where this whole thing all got started. Hope you folks will check out the English commentary that we should be setting up hopefully by the time you're hearing this. So delighted that you folks are getting into All Japan. You know, there's some fantastic work that I highly encourage that you go and check out of my man Kea. I really think that you got to watch this guy, if only for the fact that, you know, he is somebody that is there. He's teaming with Muto. He's facing against Tenryu and Kawada. And, you know, he's had a very storied career. And I highly encourage you folks to check out anything of his on YouTube. But if nothing else, remember to go check out some videos of Gary, of the Albright and Doc, and as well as go look up some James Blear. Okay, go watch yourself some Hawaiian wrestling, because you know what, that's probably on YouTube too. So I mean, have at it. You know, get yourself some wrestling goodness, because you know, we're going through rough times, but we'll all get through it. Wrestling was there then, and wrestling will be here, you know, pretty much through, you know, whatever cataclysms we encounter. So from all of us, thank you folks. Take care.